point we'll start with is a general one, and the way we've started this course has been to start on really the broadest sort of things that make a society, the structures, the organizations. We're going to get to that here in a second. And of course, this is a class on social problems. We haven't been avoiding the problems of economy and government. We'll get into some of the heaviest stuff right now. With surveillance and controversial stuff. I know at least one other student in my other classes are just very upset right now. I don't know if it's the material or if it's the way we're doing class, but just not happy with some of the things we've been talking about, and it's understandable. Some of the stuff is I don't know. It's unsettling, some of it. So that's understood. That's part of the material, and it comes with the territory when we're talking about problems, of course. Okay, so main point. Just to start with. Main point to start with here is that life today is shaped by these formal organizations, which we're going to define and talk about here. So it's hard to escape formal organizations today, and we'll see why and how. Okay? So that's a quote to start with. All right, so now we get to the stuff we've started with. Other classes I've taken, in fact, other classes I've taught before too, we've started with very personal things like close to home stuff. Some people think that's the best approach, to start with family, like religion and things that we all live and know and so on. This stuff is more, the term is abstract, because we don't usually think about these things, most people maybe, in this way, this kind of detached way, looking really at the, if we're thinking about like a house, the blueprint really of the house, not even the physical structure, really the blueprint before you even make the house. This is kind of the way we've been starting here with institutions, organizations, and systems, which we're going to include here too. All right, institutions. Underlying patterns. Organizations now, a new term, refer to actual businesses or actual corporations. The government, we'll see, is very much a formal organization. So now we can talk about turning some of these patterns into the reality, making the patterns real and actual. So again, the idea of the family is this distant thing, or an American corporation, distant thing, but now we can talk about specific ones through organizations. Other folks, will mix and match these terms, and so there is some back and forth between institutions and organizations and how they're used, but this is a common way that people talk about the difference. Organizations are real things, real entities, real schools, particular religious groups, okay, etc. All right, then bigger picture, along with our first assignment for tonight from this book. Remember, none of this is on the test. This is not on the test. It's just in those assignments. But systems, we started to think about those. Social systems, combination of the two. Really, the more than the sum of the parts, combination of organizations and institutions, and we could add in their culture and so on too. Okay, so institutions, organizations, systems, broadest stuff that makes any society. Okay, so now some particulars, specifics. About 200 years ago or so, roughly, there were a few examples of what we now call formal organizations, or complex organizations. Even our government, the U.S. government, was a relatively simple, we'd call it an organization at that point, way early on, but it was a relatively simple group of people and collection of interests and so on and so forth. It was nowhere near as complex and differentiated, we can say, with all the different bureaus offices, departments, etc. Now we have, but relatively simple, about 200 years ago even. Most people, too, during this time, either worked for themselves or worked for very small businesses. And here we can think of examples. Things are going to be local. They're going to be, directly tied to the land in a lot of ways, a lot of cases. So that's one. And then also, most owners, if you owned the business, the corporation, you also managed it typically. And there's really good documentaries on Ford, really a groundbreaking owner and manager, and he wanted his hands, he had his hands throughout his whole life in Ford. He managed, either directly or through someone else, what he owned. Today that's not the case. And then also, there were virtually no large private corporations, and this whole class, the managerial class that is so important, in capitalist societies now, didn't exist to the same extent. So a whole other social, called strata, a whole other group of people, a whole other set of jobs. Okay, so why are these organizations, and thinking about organizations, why is that important today? Well, for most of us, we're going to work in an organization of some sort of formal organization. Just 1%, that's a rough percentage, of course, but definitely the majority of us will work in some form of formal organization. Okay, so just some general points. All right, so let's look at some characteristics next. Here. Okay, so formal organizations. Now we get into, again, these general or ideal aspects of formal organizations. So again, it's abstract here, but hopefully this kind of way of thinking about things isn't too foreign. All right, so what are formal organizations in the abstract? They are deliberately planned groups around some specific goal or purpose. That was one of the questions from the assignment for tonight. Systems are driven by their purposes, by their goals. Usually we don't think about this as directing behavior, but that's one of the most important aspects of any organization or institution or system, driven by their goals and purposes. Formal organizations, what makes them so interesting here, and they're interesting in sociology and political science and on down the line, is because they live unto their own. Once they're established, once they are, again, made real, they're designed to outlive individuals. People will come and go, but the institution and the organization would last. Importantly, and this theme will come up a number of times today, they are based on rules. Formal and impersonal, we'll say more about here, but based on a clear set of rules. Also, they're based on a very fixed structure of authority, a very fixed structure of roles and positions. And, as we'll see, for each of the roles and positions, there'll be a set of responsibilities. Things that this person can do and that person cannot do. And we'll look at some structures here. Some of the blueprints of organizations today. Okay, so organizations, here are some of their characteristics. We'll see these again laid out tonight. Here's one, for example. This one has a president up top, marketing branch over here, finance over here. This is some kind of business structure, organizational structure. You've got your row of managers, and then down the line, what's this, accounts receivable, accounts payable, right, all these different offices, and down the line. There's the structure. Of course, this person here in accounting is never going to do the job of a person in sales, right? Clear roles, clear positions, tasks. Here's just another structure. president up top still, VP below the president, then your row of managers, right? Just a different structure. Yeah.
So could like Walmart fall under that?
Oh, absolutely. They follow one of these structures. Theirs is going to be this one, most typically. It's going to be closer to this one, because Walmart is a publicly traded corporation, right? I'm almost positive. They've got to be at this point.
I think.
Yeah. So anyway, this one's a different structure because whereas we got presidents up top here, ultimately with corporations, if it's publicly owned, that means people put stock into it. You put money into the corporation. You invest into that corporation as an investor. The whole stock market and all that stuff. That's people's dollars going into the business. They take your dollars, they make profit, and then they give you some of that money back. Right? That's how the stock market works, essentially, in a nutshell. Anyway, ideally, stockholders are supposed to be the head, right? If you've got money in the business, you are the one who are saying that, the CEO, the president, they should be accountable to you if it's your money, right? That's at least ideally. Anyway, then your board of directors, your president, secretary. That's slightly different. Yeah, but that's going to be a corporation of some kind. This one is going to be a nonprofit, one that's not a business. It's not a corporation. It's just going to be a different structure. Board of directors up top, group of people there making the most important choices and so on, and then a different row below them. So a couple of jokes. In this kind of area of study, there's always this back and forth between, this formal structures, all the blueprint stuff, and then reality, how people actually behave, and how human behavior will, in a lot of cases, trump, the rules and the plans, and human nature is gonna win out in a lot of these attempts to to structure behavior and so on and so forth. So, continuing and moving forward, let's look at Max Weber here, because he's important in this area of study. This is the first time we're really pointing out a person's name here. So maybe I'll reference his name. I'm not going to ask you, I'll be clear about the idea with his name, but I'm not going to just ask you for Weber. It's going to be his ideas more importantly. Okay, so looks like Weber. They always say Weber, and so that's how they always pronounce it. So I just follow in suit there. Okay, so what did he do, and why is he important in this area of study? Well, he was trying to understand how governments were changing as societies modernized. And so with that transition to the modern world that we looked at last time, one of the most important changes was in government and government organizations. So he's looking at government organizational structures and authority and where power comes from and all of these things. And he's a theorist. He's trying to make sense of it. He's trying to explain to the world what's going on. And he believed that the most important feature, if you could boil it down to one idea, how was modern society different, or how was modern government different from traditional government, or traditional authority rather? Well, he thought it boiled down to this idea of rationalization. And so we can define that and try to understand what it means. What does it mean to be rational about something? In its most basic definition, we all know what irrational means, right? If you're irrational, it's being like nonsensical or just kind of just because it's emotional, or because you have a leaning towards this or that, or if you want to buy something that you can't afford, it'd be irrational to spend your life savings on a brand new nice yacht. That's completely irrational. Although you might want it, right? So anyway, to be rational is to weigh the options and then to pick the best option. But here in this sense, it's kind of building on that idea of rationalization and rational systems. Max Weber says they depend on things like reliability, regularity, precision and attention to details there, we could say. And then competent people within each of those different positions that we looked at. You know, your manager and your vice president, and that's why we see these CEOs, the big name CEOs, come and go, right, when their business doesn't do well, when they don't have enough profit, or what have you, when the president of a business or whatever, you know, gets fired, and they're not doing a good job, because they have to be competent, and they've got to be, you know, doing a good job. Okay, so these are some of the features. We're going to keep talking about this idea here too, because it's, you know, it's really building up this basic idea. All right, so what again is non-rational or irrational when it comes to government and who fills positions? Well, it would be irrational in our system for a president to say, my brother, now you're the president, right? That wouldn't work. That'd be irrational. It would go against all of our rules and procedures and so on. Nepotism, you know, giving stuff to your friends, it would be at least against this idea of rationalization as an ideal. Of course, the reality is again, something else. You know, different between the two. And our articles get into some of the reality. And so we'll have that to explore. Anyway, so Max Weber thought modern society, the so-called modernity that people talk about, boils down to a rationalized approach to social life. A new approach. And how does this differ again from traditional ways of organization? Well, we'll see that. The picture will continue to fill in here as we go, I think. And we'll use some examples to come back to this idea, if it's not clear already. Okay, so bureaucracy. Most of the time when people talk about bureaucracy, they're talking about something bad, right? Usually it's used as a negative word, as something that's bad about government. We'll see some of that for sure, but first, Max Weber saw a lot of positives in bureaucracy. First of all, it's the most common way to organize all of the things that businesses do, governments do, and there's certain aspects here that bureaucracy is based on. One starts with, again, a clear division of labor, clear division of tasks and positions. You know, how does that help? A complex organization with lots of jobs. You know, at Walmart, you come to work every day, you know exactly what you're going to do, right? Or you go to work at a factory or business, in an office, you know exactly what you have to do that day. No confusion about role confusion, and so on. So it helps there. Hierarchy of authority and command. If you didn't have a boss to answer to, or if the boss didn't have the ultimate say, imagine the workplace when everyone, you know, has an idea and they all want their idea heard, and that would be maybe chaotic if you didn't have someone who had the final say. Okay, so hierarchy of authority, just like we saw with those maps of organizations. And then again, a set of formal rules, procedures, this whole process of records keeping, documents and so on, are all part of this idea of bureaucracy. The word bureau refers to, anyone know what that refers to? It refers to either a desk or an office. And so we can get, you know, the idea from that, and we can see how these early forms of records keeping, these early offices, were really the basis of bureaucracies here. Okay, so once again, the goal and the purpose is just to establish a long-standing form of organization. It's gonna keep things moving in the right path. You've got your agenda, your tasks, and so on. You know, everything's laid out. The rules are there. You know, you can get stuff done that way, through bureaucracy. So it's a positive here, for a lot of reasons. Okay, so moving forward here, I want to show a few short video clips next here, starting with one on scientific management and Taylorism. Frederick Taylor was someone who was important. We'll get his bio here, but he's important in this area because he had some ideas about how to improve productivity. That was his main goal. So scientific management refers to a new way to manage how people do what they do, and I'll let the video explain more so. Essentially, increased productivity, more stuff, faster.